I live where you would call filthy. The pee trap under the gym floor. People rinse, sweat and bleach down here and think it disappears. It doesn't. It settles and learns my name. This place is warm, wet, and safe from cats. It has a sound, too. The building breathing. One duct pulls in, one duct pushes out. On ordinary nights the breath is steady. On that night, it hiccuped. You'll ask, which night? I call it the night of the cut cough. Humans hate listening to themselves fail. So they trim the failing parts out of tape. When you cut a cough, you cut air. Where does the missing air go? It slides into the plumbing, folds into the water, hangs there with a metal cold taste until someone like me sniffs it. Eliza came on a drizzly afternoon. Rain in your country smells like hot asphalt calming down, kind of sad. She shouldered open the maintenance cage. The bar latch squealed like a bad harmonica. She told the custodian she needed a tripod for media arts. He told her not to rummage. Humans love saying that right before the rummaging. She found a gray plastic tote with the lid cracked and a curling label. Intercom tests, 2014 to 2017. When she peeled the tape up, a little burst of moldy magnetic smell ran the vents, skimmed the rafters, and slid into my throat. Memory has a scent. This was it. Not a student area. Mr. Klein barked from the hall. I know his shoes. The left heel chunked out ages ago, so every step answers chop, chop. We just need a tripod. Eliza said. I'll put everything back. She did not put everything back. She rolled the tote to the lone working outlet, brushed dust off a VCR the color of old gum, and leaned a fat CRT on a milk crate. The tube woke with a white slash across the middle, then bloomed into an oval. The first line of light is always a deep breath. Okay, she whispered. I hear whispers fine. The first tape clacked in. The capstan teeth bit. The timer digits glowed ice blue in the corner. And the building's 60 Hz hum bloomed in the speakers. A woman's voice flattened by a cheap ceiling mic. This is a code 2B drill. Hold in your room. Lock the door. Stay away from, cough, and the cough snapped in half. As if a razor chopped right through it. The sentence resumed without apology. Windows. Eliza looked up fast. She thumbed back 5 seconds. Again. This is a code 2B, cough, cut, stay away from windows. She slowed playback to quarter speed. Between the two edges of the splice, something thin-lipped, a half-breath, pinched and leftover. Air doesn't vanish. It hides in seams. A pinprick tingle ran the skin of my belly where I pressed the tile. She scribbled in a notebook. Jump cut in PA audio at 013, cough likely removed. Then she cocked her head, cat-like. Curious. Willing to get scratched by the truth. I like that look. The next tape was labeled Code 2B, South Wing. Darker picture. More snow. As the drill voice rolled, a hallway camera caught room 112. The angle was low, like someone left the cam at shoe height. Inside the classroom, silhouettes flinched altogether, then froze. Hold in your room. People are very obedient when they think obedience is oxygen. Eliza paused, punched digital zoom into the jam of 112. On the CRT, a thin chalk pale scratch ran the height of a hand. Nail? Metal? Under this glass. It looked like fishbone peeking out of silt. The tape had its own damp smell, old insulation and electrical tape. New shot. The nurse's office. Nurse Alvarez's shoulders hunched over a blue ledger. I know that ledger. I've listened to its spine pop open on heavy nights. The camera caught it full frame long enough to read. Headache. Nausea. Lips pale. The room number 112 kept repeating like an anchor weight. Eliza. Officer Dale's voice. His tread doesn't chop like Klein. It lands thup, thup. No nonsense. Runner's cadence. You got permission to be in here? I'm cutting a safety video. She said, I just need some old B-roll. He watched the screen until the cut cough came and went. The skin at the corners of his eyes pinched. But his face didn't change. These tapes aren't for public use. He said. Why not? Eliza asked. Because they're ugly. He smiled without warmth. Ugly doesn't teach good. It sounded like a line he'd been given to say. His radio hissed like a bucket pulled up from a dry well. And he was gone. Eliza clicked open the VCR's little audio menu and raised the monitor level just a hair, low enough to hear bed noise. Bed noise tells the truth. Behind the drill voice, a vent fan rumbled off key, close to 60 Hz. but not on it, like a big fish breathing against a net. I remember that note. On that night it never wavered. A taut string around the building's lungs. People can't smell carbon monoxide. Their lungs can. She killed the tape and lifted the tote lid again. A work order had been hiding under the lip, its corners greasy with shop hands. Stamped work order with a rubber stamp that had seen better days. Temporarily cover return vent L3, awaiting part. Signed by Klein. She took a photo. Zoomed the date. 48 hours before the drill. When you plug a return vent, the old air doesn't go back to the handler. It stays. If the generator happened to be running its weekly test, tailpipe gas could slip into the return and linger in the south wing. At the beginning of the year, Klein told freshmen the glory of modern HVAC. We make air go where it should. The danger of modern HVAC is that sometimes a piece of cardboard decides where you should go. She set that tape aside and tried one marked drill, Master PA. It was the clean copy they use in training. The same woman's voice, but no fan rumble, no wrong season clunk of ductwork, no coughs. The audio smelled like soap, pleasing, flat, antiseptic. Humans love clean versions. Clean can be filthy. Dale's bodycam tape came last. The lens bobbed at chest height. The time numbers stuttered, and the speaker carried his breath up close, dry bearings rasping. The timestamp went 0 right pointing arrow 013 right pointing arrow 713. 7 minutes gone like a mosquito slapped in the dark. One clap. Memory polite as a dog. The day's bell screamed 7th period to life. Kids poured through hallways like minnows, lockers slammed. Soda cans skittered. Eliza slid the VHS into her tote. Zipped the notebook. Tonight, she told herself, or me, I'll take the credit. At night the school empties like a drained pool. Sound has room to echo 3 times and die neatly in the ducts. Eliza came back alone with a borrowed badge and an old capture card. The fluorescent light washed her face a soft morgue blue. She patched the VCR into the laptop and watched the waveform draw itself. At 013, the line flattened too neatly to be real. Zoomed in, the 2 edges met like a fresh stitch. Beneath the main voice line, a low band at 90 to 110 Hz crawled. A hum that didn't belong to the human throat. She cued a hallway reel. The lens panned past a thermostat outside 112. Its red LED blinked once, twice, 3 times. Landing exactly on the drill voice's second syllable each time. Hold, hold. Heat calling in the wrong month. The building breathing off schedule. Humans call that an anomaly. To me, it's a memory. L3, she said, almost to herself. She held her phone beside the screen so the photo of the work order lined up. Temporarily cover return vent L3, and something clicked behind her eyes. Air that can't leave stays. It circles like a bad story told until everyone is comfortable. She had to stop and breathe. I heard the deliberate inhale. Longer than her usual pattern. A mammal's ancient instrument checking its own room. I wanted to tell her don't do that in here. But I'm a narrator, not a coach. She saved the capture and wrote in bold. L3 cover right pointing arrow CO accumulation during drill? The question mark hunched like a praying mantis. She slid in a new tape, SRO cam, 2B. The body cam picture shook as Dale ran. Then the timer jumped forward again, 7 minutes chewed to air. Eliza pressed her forehead to the table. The building went quiet enough that you could hear the P-trap under me change level, the tiny glug when a door somewhere seals and pressure flicks. Not wind, a heavy door with a closer, human hand on it. Footsteps. Low heels. Tired rhythm. Practiced and choosing not to show it. The woman paused in the doorway long enough to smell up the room. Chlorhexidine. The hospital disinfectant. A half beat before her voice. I knew her from that smell alone. What are you doing this late? Nurse Alvarez asked. Her words were not unfriendly. They were empty like a stored cot. I'm cutting the code 2B safety piece. Eliza said, still half folded over the table. I need some background tapes. The safest thing, the nurse said, stepping in, is not to play things that make people too afraid to come to school. She came close enough that the cleaned hand smell sat on my water like a sheet. Do you have notes from that night? Eliza asked. The nurse didn't check her watch, which told me she wanted to. Her eyes flicked over the CRT and stopped on the paused zoom of that white scratch on the 112 jam. Her lips pressed. The way a sentence wants to be erased. Have you ever been low on oxygen, Eliza? She asked. And without waiting. When people are. They get twice as obedient. They do every step right. And they die very politely. No noise. No broken doors. Eliza didn't move. In the record, the nurse said, "We called it mass anxiety. That's the safe answer for everything." She left 2 thin-heeled tracks in the dust, parallel rails leading not out of the room, but behind the story. The door sighed shut, and Eliza looked smaller and angrier at the same time. The VCR made a bad animal sound. The tape snagged, a tongue of glossy black peeking out of the door. "Don't you die," Eliza murmured. Her fingers, steady, clever, teased the ribbon free, flattened it with a thumbnail, clipped in a clear patch. "Those hands have rescued a lab fish before. I know because I was there that day, too, holding my laugh underwater." Playback stuttered back to life. The low band under the PA line came up clearer. Eliza jotted. "Low freak 90 to 110 Hz under PA, vent fan? If frogs could whisper, I'd tell her. That's the sound of a smart building pretending it's fine when it's short on air." She packed 2 tapes, zipped the tote, and finally turned to face the empty hallway. The school mascot head, a foam seabird, hung crooked at the far junction. Its black plastic eyes catching fluorescent glare into 2 wet dots. Masks aren't scary to her, stillness with instructions is. Hold in your room, stay away from windows. The kind of sentences that steal choices quietly. As she left, I rose to the grate, my chin above the rust. Dry leaves from the courtyard tumbled in the AC draft like little fish bodies. A laminated poster curled on the cinder block. Safety Month, October. The word safety was printed larger than all the others. As if safety needs to shout to be believed. I laughed in my damp throat. Safety is a word you hang. Air is the thing you forget. The VCR cooled with a small tack. Like an old knuckle. Under the slab, the water in the trap shifted again. A building's tiny exhale caught in plumbing. Down the corridor the intercom test tone burped and died. And the phrase, "hold in your room," drifted through the ductwork in faint reflections. Like notes from a clarinet played 3 rooms away. Somewhere between those reflections, a half cough was still looking for its other half. It has all night, so do I. I slept and dreamed of return vent L3 opening like a whale mouth. Gulping every clean sentence people try to broadcast. I watched the word hold drift over my head like a fat moth and fly straight into the thermostat light and burn without sound. I woke to a tiny chirp from nowhere. 2 memories in one. A CO detector that someone had unpinned long ago. And the echo of a warning that still lived in the circuit's ghost. Even with the battery gone, some things continue to beep in your head. By morning, the rain rinsed itself away. Sun put a bitter shine on the parking lot. The kids burst back in, yelling, their lungs set on wide open. I pressed my belly to the cool tile and counted their footfalls. Eliza will be back tonight. People who have heard half a cough cannot stand not hearing the other half. They will go looking, and when they do, I will tell them how this story smells. Like hands freshly washed. Like cardboard over a mouth. Like ledger paper pressed dry with somebody's palm. They call this place safe. I call it a self-teaching lung. And here's the lesson it will not stop repeating. Don't lock the door when there isn't any air. Morning has a detergent voice in this building. It says yesterday didn't happen while it rubs circles into tile. Bleach drips down to me in cool strains. And the water in my trap settles. Flattens. Pretends to forget. People do that, too. They call it policy. Eliza came back while the first period bell was still vibrating. She had a backpack that clicked like cutlery, scanner. Cables. A drive shaped like a flattened pebble. She walked past the trophy case without reading the names. The seabird mascot's head still hung crooked at the far end. Eyes black and glassy. A suggestion more than a bird. She did not go to the maintenance cage first. She went to the nurse. I know the nurse's office by its temperature. The one room that tries to be a different climate. Paper charts breathe here, but only on a schedule. The air carries hand sanitizer. Glycerin lotion. The papery breath of gauze. And a faint metal. A tray that remembers blood. Ms. Alvarez? Eliza's voice stayed polite and small. It's a survival shape. The nurse looked up, tired in a practiced way. Her hair was pinned like paperwork. You again, she said, not surprised. Not thrilled. A little relieved to have something to do besides click a form. I'm recording a training piece, Eliza said, holding her Pebble drive as if it might catch light and sell itself. I wanted to make sure we, reflect actual health patterns. Reflect, Alvarez said, and let the word rest on her tongue until it evaporated. What patterns do you think we have? Eliza didn't answer. She glanced at the blue ledger on the desk, spine cracked. Corners polished by hands. Alvarez saw the glance. We don't let student reporters photograph protected medical records. The nurse said, you can observe, you can take notes, you can be fast. She pulled the book close. Flipped to a page that had learned to curl at the edges from being opened more than the rest. Dates carried their own climate. Fall pages smell like wool and wet leaves. Spring like pencil shavings. This one smelled like stale air that forgot to move. Eliza stood with her notebook. Pencil ready. The way prey stands near a waterhole. Alvarez put an index card over the left column. Names, and slid her finger down the right. Here, she said, and did not say drill day. Eliza copied quickly. Clean block letters. No arrows. No hearts. Nurse log. 10/17. Code 2B, drill. 10/24. 112, headache. Nausea. Lips pale. Returned to class per admin. 10/25. 112, dizziness. Shallow breathing. Refused transport. 10/27. 112, lightheaded, mother called. 10/28. 105, anxiety, ice pack. 10/29. 112, headache. Cough, no inhaler. 10/30. 112, nausea, observe. 10/31. 112, dizzy, water. 10/32. 112, can't get a full breath, returned when drill ended. 10/36. 112, lips pale. Shaky. Note. Teacher substitute, ward. Alvarez's finger stopped there, reluctant to go lower. Refused transport, Eliza said, too softly to be a challenge, too loudly to be thoughtless. That's what the form says. The nurse replied. Her eyes left the page and found the wall clock. A second hand chopped the room into identical pieces. We use the form. The form protects everyone. She replaced the index card and closed the book as if tucking it in. Eliza's pencil kept moving after the ledger disappeared. People who draw conclusions in ink get in trouble. She draws them in graphite and keeps the eraser close. May I ask, was the oximeter working that day? We didn't have one, Alvarez said, and then immediately looked like she wished she'd used a different tense. We do now. Room 112 repeats. Eliza said. Neutral. The south wing repeats. Alvarez answered. She straightened a stack of epinephrine brochures the way you align soldiers you don't expect to deploy. Then, softer. When people are told to hold, they hold. She might have been apologizing to someone. It wasn't Eliza. Eliza thanked her, left the office, and stood in the hall with the feeling you get after a dentist visit, clean. Numbed, not actually better. She stared at the thermostat outside 112 for 5 seconds more than a student should. Then went hunting for the next piece of policy, The IT closet lives behind a door that looks like a locker's older brother. Inside, servers hum, small lions behind a grate. The air is dry enough to crack a frog if you were foolish enough to nap inside. The man who tends them is named Bixby and has a laugh only for jokes about cables. Security footage? He said, when Eliza smiled with a university hoodie and the Pebble drive held like a micro-credential. We don't do personal requests. Legal has to. The principal asked me to pull B-roll. She lied. People believe the passive voice when it wears a badge. B-roll, he repeated, tasting the consonants. He stared at her lanyard. Her ears, no earrings. Her shoes, clean. Then did a calculus that traded time now for fewer emails later. He tapped keys, spun a monitor, revealed a calendar grid full of tiny camera icons. All of them a shade of patient gray. What day? Bixby asked, already annoyed at the answer. October 17th, she said. The month might as well be printed in the carpet for how often feet have tried to wipe it off. He loaded the south wing hallway, the nurse office, the gym vestibule, and the exterior generator pad view. On another screen, a list under SRO_cam. He clicked the wrong thing on purpose. Those are law enforcement, Bixby said quickly, as if reciting after a shock. Chain of custody. I don't have access to. He had enough access to see timestamps. And even if you close a door quickly. Drafts escape. SRO_CAM_0214_10 to 17_ body 01 MP4. 0 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds to 0 hours 7 minutes and 13 seconds. Privacy hold. SRO_CAM_0214_10 to 17_ body 01 AUD.wave. 0 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds to 0 hours 7 minutes and 13 seconds. Redacted. Eliza didn't blink hard or lean forward. She let the words walk into her notebook like they were invited. Hallway 2B? She asked instead. That I can give you, Bixby said, eager to be the helpful person in the room. He cued the 12 FPS hall cam video and dragged it onto her drive. While it copied, he pointed at the monitor like a docent. Intercom test. Lock and drill. Nothing happens. Nothing, Eliza said. You want the nurse office feed? He offered. Wanting to be finished with wanting now. He clicked nurse_office_10 to 17 MP4 into the queue before she answered. The generator cam got added. 2. Because sometimes people are generous when they don't know they are. While the progress bar ate its way across the rectangle, a server somewhere coughed, fan bearing catching, and the room jolted with the tiniest change in pressure. My water moved. Doors closing make tiny storms. Eliza was gone before the files finished their first sleep on the drive. She sets up where she can control the light, the maintenance cage. CRT glowing like a small moon. She treats the transfer footage like relics, gloves would be right. But she has fingers that remember being clean. The hallway picture did what hallway pictures do. It saw nothing happen, but nothing is a kind of something when you happen to be told to forget air. Students in their rooms, heads down, door windows blank, a strip of red blinks on the wall, thermostat light, once every 19 frames. A heartbeat you wouldn't know you were counting. Nurse office. Alvarez moves methodically. Calling parents. Filling boxes on a form with the expression of a person tightening bolts. The ledger enters the frame and leaves again. Eliza watches the clock hand swing. Then writes 10:24 to 10:36 in neat chalkboard letters. The generator pad camera is the challengingly boring one. A concrete rectangle fenced like a zoo exhibit nobody visits. On 10/17 it sits like a sleeping animal with a pipe into the wall. At 10 hours 23 minutes and 40 seconds. A flicker runs through the image. Not light, not shadow. Pixel shimmer radiating from the muffler in a heat ghost way. A second later, the chain on the gate vibrates against itself for no reason the camera can admit. Eliza rewinds, plays, rewinds. There's no sound on this clip. Sound lives across the building, crawling through ducts and into lungs. Not in cables. She opens the body cam audio listing and meets the word redacted again. A word that wears middle management like a suit. It's fine, she tells no one. She opens something else. The intercom master Eliza ripped last night. The ugly hallway tape, the nurse ledger transcription, and the generator shimmer. Then she stacks them all on a timeline like trays on a cafeteria rail. She drops a metronome on the top and starts tapping markers where the thermostat light blinks. The building has a pulse, if you listen long enough. It taps back. The pattern is rude but polite about it. Blink at 10 hours 24 minutes and 3 seconds. Blink at 12. Blink at 31. A gap at 45. Then 3 quick blink 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 under the intercom's second hold. People later will call that random. The frog calls it what it is, a system learning to gasp. Eliza cross fades the PA audio and the nurse office video. This is a code 2B drill. Hold in your room. The nurse's head turns toward the ceiling speaker right when the cut cough should have lived. In the nurse's silence, you can hear the building remember that it is a throat. She takes out her phone and calls a number she's written in the corner of her notebook. Next to 112 circled 3 times. Ms. Ward? She says. Voice going small again. I'm reaching out for a training video. I heard you were subbing the day we drilled code 2B in the South Wing. A long inhale. You're calling, now? The voice on the other end is brittle and wrapped in a blanket. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, it's a school project. I don't talk to the school. Ward says. I talk to my doctor. And when they don't listen either. I talk to my bathroom fan. It understands air. Eliza doesn't apologize again. Were there inhalers in your room? She asks. 1. Empty. The box was there. The cap was missing. Ward says. She swallows. And the phone line makes wire sounds. Nobody broke a door. I still think about that. Eliza thanks her. Writes empty inhaler and no broken doors in a tidy hand. And then, because people are braver on the phone than in person, she says. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Ward replies. Be exact. Eliza hangs up and starts being exact. She extracts stills. The scratch at 112's jam. The generator's heat ghost. The nurse's ledger page with all non-names. The thermostat blinks. She screenshots Bixby's list showing privacy hold. She creates a folder named sequence_0214 because even truth gets lost without labeling. Then she sits very still and listens to the building. The building says, 2 doors opened. 1 door closed. Someone laughed by the vending machine and then remembered it wasn't funny. I feel the laugh through the water. Laughter puts a soft ripple into drains, crying puts salt. People who weep in school bathrooms weep carefully. The water remembers being cut with snot. When the last bell empties the day, Eliza stays. She loops the PA cut again and again until the missing piece isn't silence anymore, it's a shape. You can learn a lot from negative space. Artists know this. So do predators. She exports the composite and stares at the number at the bottom, 1207. The drill lasted 12 minutes if you count it by clock. It lasted longer if you count it by lungs. She writes 12 minutes next to 9 symptoms and 7-minute hole and then draws a line between them. It is not a straight line because the paper bends around the metal spiral. I remember the morning after that day. The custodians mopped with more zeal. Perhaps because they had been praised for a smooth drill. Praise is an oxygen for some. The water that came down to me was heavier. Iron hint. A penny dissolving on the tongue. The janitor's bucket smelled of pine and an extra squeeze of citrus to cover something sour. The P-trap burped twice in its sleep. A drunk caught in a dream. I tasted iron because iron left a person in mid-air and shook hands. People forget how fast iron wants to rust when it's introduced to oxygen without the proper courtesies. Back over the grate, Eliza pulls a legal pad, yellow. Sky color for offices that never look up. She writes an equation of her own. If return vent L3 is covered right pointing arrow, then south wing keeps its own exhaled air. If generator test vents tailpipe gas near intake right pointing arrow, then CO circulates. If code 2B orders doors locked and movement stopped right pointing arrow, then exposure continues. If symptoms logged as anxiety right pointing arrow, then no medical escalation. If bodycam hole aligns with peak thermostat blinks right pointing arrow, then something happened off the record. She stops, looks at the seabird head. Now just a silhouette against a deeper shadow. Why 7 minutes? She whispers. I answer in the only language I have. I make the water cluck once. Then settle. It means because that's the length of an apology you aren't allowed to say out loud. The intercom barks a test tone, late afternoon. Not the 317 that belongs to machines and frogs, and the voice that lives in the ceiling says. This is a test of the internal audio system. It sounds friendlier when it doesn't have instructions to give. You can always tell when a voice is reading from a script because it doesn't leave fingerprints. Eliza records the test anyway. She drops its waveform under the old drill and watches the wavelengths not match. The present tone is cleaner. The headspace is open. The low band sits right on 60. A building that can breathe sounds different. She labels the file breath_now.wave and the other one breath_then.wave and stares at both until her thoughts slow enough to choose a door. Doors are important. People think they are about in or out. They are about pressure. A closed door with a locked handle doesn't just keep you from the hall, it keeps the room from equalizing. Next, she says to herself, room 112. You can hear when someone decides. The air around their sentence firms up. She packs the ledger notes. The thermostat blinks. The generator ghost. The list with the hole. And the 2 breaths. She leaves drill. Master PA on the VCR like a sacrament and kills the CRT. The tube collapses to a bright dot that takes too long to die. The dot is white, then gray, then an afterimage in my own eyes under the grate. We all have dots that outlast the screen. As Eliza's footsteps fade, someone else moves where she had stood. The nurse? The officer? No, the maintenance man. Klein, chop, chop, as steady as his heel. He opens the cage, looks at the VCR where a tape sits and a story clenches its fists. And he taps the eject button with a finger that has cut itself on sheet metal more than once. The machine swallows the cassette back in, then thinks, then obeys. Klein pockets the tape, shuts the door, and turns the key counterclockwise. The way a person turns a memory short of locked. But enough. He does not glance at the grate. He does not notice a pair of eyes there. Round and unafraid. A frog at the drain's lip like a gargoyle for a smaller cathedral. He smells of laundry powder, hot dust, and a hand cream that tries and fails to keep up with a dry job. As he walks away, the air concedes a little, and the water back below me ticks. You may ask if Eliza will be discouraged when she discovers a tape missing. She will not. She already made 3 copies when the server drive was still warm. People who make stories out of facts learn to assume a policy of disappearance. They cultivate redundancies. They carry their own weather. That night, when the building drops below its day temperature and the ducts relax, the 317 test pings the PA network. The voice that lives up there says hello to nobody in particular and tries its throat. Between the tone and the announcement, there is one small sound like a breath left in a coat. If you lay last year's wave under tonight's and line up the 2 peaks with a patient hand, you can see where something once was and isn't anymore. I'm patient. I live in the kind of dark that goes uninspected because it is helpful. The ledger entries tap around my bowl. The chain at the generator shivers in my memory. The 7-minute hole hangs between frames like a grin that didn't get the joke. Be exact, Ms. Ward had said. Excellent advice for prey and for weather. Tomorrow, Eliza will open room 112. Doors are most honest just after they open. The air that rushes in tells you what the air was when it couldn't. I wet my eyes and blink up through the grate. The mascot's black beads catch the emergency light and return it as 2 tiny moons. People find comfort in symbols that won't breathe. It's cleaner that way. But if you want to know a building, you put your ear to its vents and listen to what it's been holding. You count the blinks. You write down the numbers. You don't let anyone call it ugly until you're finished. Evening turns the south wing into a lung with one nostril. The others clogged by dust and decisions. When the custodians roll their buckets away and the fluorescent ballast settles into its thin, constant whine, you can hear the building's real tone, 90 to 110 cycles. The fish on dry land note of a fan that wants more air than it has. Eliza comes with a messenger bag and a purpose that makes her feet quieter. She has a little hard hat light clipped to her hoodie string and a coil of blue painter's tape around her wrist. She doesn't try the handle first, she tries the haul. Listening. The way prey listens before it lowers its head to water. When she does touch the room 112 lever, it depresses a 1/4 inch and refuses her like a polite clerk. Classroom doors here lock from the hall with a key and from the room with a thumb turn. The strike plate is deep and honest. A credit card is just a rumor. Eliza isn't the kind of person who travels with a set of picks. But schools teach more than they intend. And every cohort passes down a technique. She kneels, peels a strip of painter's tape as long as the jam, and feeds it between door and frame where the latch lives. Sticky side to the metal. She hums, soft, off-key, to keep her hands from shaking. Then draws the tape up. Coaxing. The tape brings out what it can. A crumb of gray putty. A flake of paint. And, caught right at the latch, a thin crescent that looks like mothwing. Keratin isn't a pretty word, but it shines under the headlamp like proof. She swallows, tapes the mothwing into her notebook, and stands. Don't be dramatic, she tells herself, and means steady. Then she scans the transom. The return air slot above the door is painted the same beige as the wall, apologies disguised as primer. There's a strip of laminated paper taped on the hallway side. Lockdown procedures in bold. Bullet points in passive voice. The door itself gives up for less than a badge. The night custodian has wedged it from inside with a rubber chalk, the helpful habit of people who mop alone. Eliza knocks twice, a courtesy to a room, then slips her fingers along the bottom till she finds the wedge. Flicks it with 2 knuckles, and feels the door settle back toward her. Pressure changes are a language. The room sighs under its breath. She slides inside and lets the hydraulic closer take the door the last 6 inches. The latch clicks with the same precision as a stopwatch. Classrooms at night smell like dry glue and old breath. This one smells additionally of albuterol, plastic and menthol, a ghost note under the dust. The ceiling tiles are aftermarket stars in a low sky, with brown rings where storms once learned the floor plan. The thermostat sits on the wall beside a PA speaker clock combo that tells a time 4 minutes kinder than the hallway clock. Okay, Eliza says to the desks. To the spelling bee banner from 5 years back. To the multiplication chart curling at one corner. To a cartoon poster that says be kind with teeth too big. She clicks her light to low and sweeps the door jamb. Up close, the white slash resolves into 3 parallel scratches. Faint, the middle one deeper. A zipper that stopped short. Halfway down is a darker smudge. She takes a micro swab from a Ziploc, because she thinks like an editor and a forensic tech had a student, and touches the smudge. The cotton darkens not with blood. That would be too loud for this story, but with rubber. A shoe sole scuffed where someone set their stance and pulled. She crouches and finds the inhaler exactly where Ms. Ward's voice had put it, under the teacher desk. Just beyond the footrest. Albuterol HFA. Blue. Cap missing. There's a pharmacy label scuffed to illegibility by use and a cracked dose counter stuck on 0. Eliza photographs it with a phone that doesn't click. She doesn't pick it up. It sits in the picture like a small argument no one won. On the floor beside the desk lies a door chalk wedge of the same rubber as the custodian's, but older, with a slice across the top as if something heavy closed on it. On the whiteboard, in faint marks that only the guilty eyes will see, there's a list of verbs in past perfect and a sentence that ends and then. She tapes paper streamers, thin strips she tears from a spiral-bound pad, over the return grill and the supply diffuser. The paper above the supply lifts and flutters. The one above the return hangs. Indifferent, she writes no draw in the margin, with the kind of calm that grows over a fracture. Room tone, she says, and sets a pocket recorder on the center table. It's a cheap device, the kind whose preamps smear, but you can still hear a building in it. She claps once, then once more for the echo count, then stands on a plastic chair and presses a ceiling tile up with her palm. Above the grid, a warm flannel of fiberglass. Metal purlins like ribs, conduit shiny where hands have found it, and the return trunk with its throat labeled in faded Sharpie, L3. The branch into room 112 is a rectangle of ductboard. Seams mummified in foil tape. Where the branch meets the main, there's a shadow square of cleaner insulation around the joint, clean because something covered it once. Immediately downstream, an orphaned triangle of corrugated cardboard clings inside the throat. 2 duct-taped corners still holding their ancient silver. Someone did remove the cover. Not the whole of it. Eliza breathes through her mouth and tastes cardboard like a paper cut. She slides her phone up and takes pictures in a little stuttering burst. Then she reaches with the gentleness of a person answering a sleeping baby and pinches the cardboard. Tape peels with a noise that in a library would feel like an assault. She pulls the chunk free. And with it comes a smell like attic heat and a hint of exhaust that lived in fibers and learned the alphabet here. The cardboard is stamped with a brand and the number 3 in marker. Eliza lowers it like an artifact. There's handwriting on one edge. Temp cover, L3. The marker bled into the grain and stayed. She puts the wedge of cardboard in a gallon bag. She wipes her hands on the legs of her jeans and looks back up into the plenum. There's something else. A puck the size of a cookie tin with a dead 9 volts battery rubber banded to its back. Stuck to the steel web with a magnet. Not a smokehead. Not a sprinkler. A cheap recorder. The kind teachers buy to capture lectures because the district system never ships on time. The cord snakes down behind the clock, speaker combo. The red light is dead. The micro SD door is spring-loaded and indifferent. Be exact, Ms. Ward had said. Eliza pops the card, drops it into a second bag, and replaces the puck exactly as she found it. She lowers the tile, steps down, and waits for the room to feel like a room again. The pocket recorder on the table has been collecting room tone this whole time. The distant refrigerator yawned from the faculty lounge. A staple settling somewhere like a tiny frog plop. And the building's animal hum, the one I know by heart. Eliza kneels by the vision panel in the door and traces the rubber glaze where the scratches are. She sets her phone in the corner on time-lapse. Old air performs slower. It will show itself given patience and a sensor. She tests the PA speaker by standing right under it and whispering hold to see if the speaker cone whispers back. It doesn't. That's not how speakers work. And she knows it. But superstition is a method too. She looks up at the ceiling again and sees that one tile, a different brand, denser, less pockmarked, was replaced. The tile over the teacher's desk. She climbs again and peels its corner. Masking tape residue kisses the T-bar. Somebody taped something there once, a sign, a wire, a hope. She closes the room and sits in the teacher chair to take notes. People think being exact is a dry art. It's wet, sweat at the back of the knees, the mouth getting cottony as you plan which lie to cut first. She writes, 112 notes. 3 parallel scratches at jam. Mid-depth, centered at approximately 40 inches. Black rubber transfer, stance, below scratches. Inhaler under desk. HFA. Cap missing. Counter equals 0. Door wedge with cut mark. Pressure? Return streamers dead. Supply streamers active. Above ceiling. L3 branch right pointing arrow cardboard. Temp cover. Remnants recovered. Lecture recorder. Puck. Above ceiling. Micro SD acquired. Tile replaced above desk. Tape residue on T-bar. Room tone collected. Thermostat LED unknown, will correlate. She circles cardboard until the paper thins. She underlines recorder twice, then stops underlining because underlining is like clapping. You get to do it only so many times before the animal in the room notices. The animal notices anyway. At 3:16, the building does the thing it does every night. It clears its throat. The PA system pings a tone up in the far duct. You'd never hear it in day noise. But the room, half knowing, pulls into a smaller shape. The thermostat LED blinks once, then accepts itself. Eliza's time-lapse catches the paper streamer twitch over the dead return like a fish gill testing water that isn't there. Then, faint as a memory you wish you didn't have, the speaker clock issues its test sentence, not the drill line, not the training tape, just, "This is a test of the internal audio system." The phrase completes. No cough, but a half-breath slides between tone and words. The kind of inhale a person takes when they're about to read something that isn't theirs. Eliza freezes. There is no reason for a human to be in this hallway at 3:17 a.m. Reason belongs to the day staff. Night belongs to schedules. She reaches out and gently unlatches the vision panel's wire guard. The hinge squeaks the quietest blackboard scream. She peers into the hallway. Nothing moves. But nothing moving is a movement when you expect a mop. She opens the guard wider to point her lens at the thermostat and the time clock to lock timecode to blink. The panel snaps back against the jamb and, with a small mercy-collected shudder, sticks. Her elbow kisses the lever. The latch finds itself all the way home. Don't lock yourself in, she tells her hand, and laughs once because a laugh will soften a stupid feeling. The laugh comes back from the PA speaker with no delay. Speakers don't listen, rooms do. Her recorder is still running on the table. It catches her breath for 10 seconds, a pace faster than resting, and a tiny wheeze she doesn't have during the day. I should tell you, carbon monoxide has no smell. But memory of CO does. It's anticipatory. Humans breathe to the shape of their fear. She stands, gathers the streamers from the grills, bagging them like specimens, then kills the recorder and pockets it with the micro SD. She leaves the inhaler under the desk. The way a priest leaves a relic, not because it's holy, but because it means more here than it would anywhere else. At the door, she pauses and lays her palm flat against the frame. Buildings have pulses. Wood does, steel does. Too. In a different language. The frame thrums. She flips the lock, turns the lever, and the pressure equalizes through the smallest gap with a kiss sound like someone forgiving someone they intend to resent again tomorrow. Out in the hall, she relatches the vision panel guard and tapes over the scratch at the jamb with one neat horizontal strip. Her way of measuring where memory will split if it's pressed again. The strip is labeled A in pen. She walks with purpose toward the maintenance cage and the CRT moon. On the way she passes the generator pad camera's view in person. Chain still. Muffler dreaming. A spider web hung between fence and conduit. Dew mapping the geometry of neglect. Bixby doesn't haunt his server room at this hour. Klein does. Sometimes. But his chop is nowhere. Eliza reaches the cage, badges in, and does not go for the VCR. She goes for the laptop and a card reader. The micro SD clicks into the slot with a nickel sound. The directory opens like a hesitant confession. Rec _ the 17th of October 2014. Rec _ the 10th of October 2014. And so on. The dates are old, but the file lengths are greedy. The little puck was a hoarder. She double-clicks rec _ the 17th of October 2014 _ October 22nd 11.wave and hears her city's most ordinary sound. Fluorescent hum. She fast-forwards. Voices enter. Children's. Then Ms. Ward's. Crisp in a classroom way that makes you sit up straighter even if you're a frog. Okay. Pencils down. This is a drill. Doors closed. The intercom lays the drill over the room without asking permission. This is a code 2B drill. Hold in your room. Lock the door. Stay away from. The cough lives here. Not cut. Not neat. Not one cough. 2. One student. Then a second body, Ms. Ward. Trying to make air behave by talking to it. Albuterol chirps. That sharp little whistle you only get when the canister is empty. Ms. Ward says, "Cap, cap," and someone answers. It's gone. The door lever clacks. The rubber wedge scrapes. 3 fingernails try the jam and leave their thin white invitation. No one breaks a door. The PA continues, soothing the ceiling. The vent above the desk does not draw. Air behaves like a polite guest and stays where it has been asked to stay. Eliza takes her headphones off because people do when their heart rate increases and they don't want to admit to the room they're in. She stares at the waveform she's dragged across the screen. At 013 on the PA track. A clean flat line where someone with software thought they were saving everyone trouble. On the ceiling mic track. At the same time, 2 blunt hills like knuckles. She moves the files into a folder labeled breath _ then _ raw and duplicates them twice. Then she prints a still of the waveform with hand claps in pencil where the cough peaks live. She writes Ms. Ward's voice in the margin and for the first time allows anger on the page. It looks like a line drawn quickly. At a pressure that will break the lead if you breathe wrong. I have heard a lot of people breathe through a lot of choices in this building. They always think the choice lives in the next sentence. It lives in the air you've already drawn. Ms. Ward did not get enough of it on that day by any measure except the one the school uses. No broken doors. That measure is an insult to lungs. Lungs break quietly. Eliza unclasps the painter's tape from her wrist and tears 6 labels with dates. Room numbers. And notes. She sticks one on the bag with the cardboard wedge, L3 temp cover, and one on the micro SD. Ceiling rec 112. She tucks both into the messenger bag. She tapes a third label to her own wrist with a self-sarcastic smile. Remember to breathe. At the grate, I watch her shoulder rise and fall as she lets her body take back the work she's made it defer. She breathes like a person who's counting to a number she doesn't want to say. She kills the CRT. Lets the white dot collapse. And steps into a corridor that refuses to decide whether it's a hospital or a public library. Back in room 112. The paper streamers she didn't fetch. The little torn triangles peeking from the edge of the return. Droop as the building exhales into itself. The thermostat doesn't blink. The door, with its new strip of tape labeled "It looks like a wound that's been lined for a stitch." You might ask, if you were the kind of person who likes rules. Where is the supernatural? There isn't any. The horror here is documentary. A card that says temp cover. A body that says cap missing. A drawer that says no refill. A clock that keeps a better time than a lung. I am just a frog in a drain. Telling you where the air went when nobody wrote down where it was supposed to be. Eliza leaves with air turned into files. She will cut them against the training PA and the nurse's ledger, and the thermostat blinks and the generators shimmer until a picture forms that no administrator can call ugly without also admitting it's theirs. The building shifts. Pipes tick. Somewhere, the vending machine drops a candy bar without being asked. And the sound climbs the ducts like a joke with bad timing. In the south wing, behind a beige door, room 112 sleeps with its scratch marks turned inward where only the wood will remember. Tomorrow the chapter will be titled "The Way Machines and Editors Like It." K4, the cutter. Humans will call it Chapter 4. The person who trimmed the cough, as if that person is the story. They are not. The story is that air, when told to hold, obeys. Morning wears a tie in the front office. It smells like toner and citrus wipes. And the carpet pretends to be quiet while it eats footfalls. The wall clock chews seconds into uniform bites. Paperwork lines up as if the paper believes in marching. Eliza presents herself at the glass with a smile that fits a student ID, smaller than hope. Larger than fear. She asks to see Mr. Harrow, the media arts teacher, on post-production standards for training materials. The secretary looks at the calendar without reading it and buzzes her through. That's one thing about schools. If you walk with a purpose and a prop, clipboard, camera, lanyard, the doors stop questioning. Harrow's room smells like lens cloth and stale coffee. Posters of rule of thirds grids and a faded, fix it in post, joke above a rack of boom mics. He's younger than the cynicism in his eyes. Or maybe the cynicism is just sleep debt. He greets Eliza with a guilt he hasn't earned yet. "You're the newscast kid," he says. "I'm doing a Code 2B piece." Eliza says, unzipping her bag, laying out terms the way surgeons lay instruments. "I pulled our master PA. There's a cut at 013. Harrow's face does not register the timecode. But the way she says already measured moves something in him. He pulls a flash drive from his key lanyard and opens a folder labeled District_Assets, Safety, Audio. Files named like polite lies. CODE2B_master_clean_V6, wave. PA_announce_final_final.wave. Drill_generic_no_panic.wave. We didn't record those, he says. District comms sends them down. Can I see the session? Eliza asks. We don't get sessions, just mixdowns. He clicks properties, 44.1 kHz. Mono, 16-bit. In the metadata. Originator, District Communications, Phelps. Software. Audition 13.0. BWF Bext tag bland with drill copy for training. Remove distress. Remove distress. Eliza repeats. The phrase tries to flee her mouth like a moth and hits her teeth instead. Harrow exhales. Look, I know, but they do this with every public-facing thing. They compress to -16 LUFS. EQ the mud out. And yeah, they cut coughs. And sirens. And kids swearing. Standard hygiene. He says hygiene like a person who flosses while reading emails. Do you have emails? She asks. Nobody has emails, he says. Then he adds, because he's human. But people keep everything. He drags a window open to a shared drive called comms_archive that someone forgot to lock. A folder named School Safety Training, Assets. Inside, a subfolder. CODE2B. Inside that, files like a breadcrumb trail. Phelps_memo_remove anxiety triggers.pdf. CODE2B_session, CZEX. Render_notes.txt. Harrow clicks the CZEX once then thinks better of it. It'll yell at us for missing media. Let it yell, Eliza says. The session opens in a complaint's worth of dialog boxes. Missing file. Cough_2. Wave. Missing file. Cough_1. Wave. Replace all? Harrow ticks skip until the timeline appears. Track 1, PA_Vox. Track 2, Noise Print_Hall. Track 3, Tone_1 kHz. At 013, a razor icon sits proud. 220 milliseconds crossfades kiss across a surgical seam. 2 clips in the bin are muted with the names cough_1.wave and cough_2.wave grayed out like bad memories. Eliza leans in. She doesn't smile. Her pupils do. Can you open render_notes.txt? She asks. Harrow does, half hoping for boredom. The file is not boring. Render notes. Code 2B training. Normalize PA_V to -16 LUFS. HPF at 120 Hz to remove HVAC rumble. Kids freak at low hum. Notch at 1.8 kHz. Harshness. Cut student cough under. Stay away from. Marla. Cut teacher cough. Ward. Confirm. Declick transition with 20 milliseconds crossfades. Keep tone short. Legal says tone triggers in some populations. Label as Master Clean for Dr. Gulliver, no anxiety words. Harrow scrolls. There is a screenshot pasted inline of an email thread. Because some people keep hot things where they burn. From Marla Phelps, MP helps at district.org. 2. Dr. Lynn Gulliver, Officer Dale, Nurse Alvarez, Mr. Harrow. Subject. Re. Code 2B drill training, audio pass. Small but important. Please take out distressing elements, coughs, panic noise, from the training audio. We want rehearsal to feel calm. Messaging. Everyone did great. Avoid language that suggests exposure. Legal prefers anxiety. M. Eliza's mouth tightens on two names. Dale. Alvarez. She doesn't look at Harrow. She photographs the screen with the speed of someone who knows screens vanish. Harrow doesn't stop her. He is not brave exactly, he is tired of being tidy. Why is Ward in render notes? He asks out loud. To the empty dignity of the session window. Eliza says, because someone knew whose cough that was. She looks at the razor marker at 013 like it might choose to be ashamed. They export the session markers to a CSV. Timecode entries line up like teeth. Harrow writes a note to himself he will never look at. Ask comms about Ward. Then he closes the program the way a person closes a hand that's touched something too hot. He pulls the flash drive. You didn't get this from me, he says, not like a cliché but like a man putting a band-aid on a bad pipe. Outside, the front office wakes fully. The secretary laughs in a key reserved for people above her pay grade. The principal passes and leaves a cologne that thinks it smells like forest. Eliza angles herself toward the nurse instead of the principal because she is good at reading air and knows which lungs still want to talk. Alvarez is labeling a drawer of EpiPens. She looks up as if her neck hurts. Eliza doesn't waste the only kind of mercy left in bureaucracies, time. They cut your day, Eliza says, setting the printout of the render notes on the desk. The Marla email at the top. Alvarez's jaw tightens slow, like a hinge adjusted in winter. Everyone has their reasons. Eliza doesn't let the phrase have room. Legal prefers anxiety. Who told you to write anxiety 9 times in 12 minutes? The nurse picks up a pen and puts it down, twice. She doesn't look at the paper. She looks at the clock because clocks are safer than moral weather. The assistant superintendent called it that. She says finally. He said the word everyone could live with. He also said we did a great job. People like being told that. You didn't have an oximeter. Eliza says, you have one now. We have many things now. Alvarez replies, and the sentence sounds like a funeral where you lay out gifts for the dead. Then, softer. I put lips pale on purpose. It's a vital sign even when the form doesn't honor it. Eliza slides a folded photo across the desk. The inhaler. Counter at 0. Alvarez touches the glossy corner with the pad of one finger. She always said she brought her own. The nurse says, and then stops. We're done. She adds, not meanly, just to keep herself from bleeding. You'll send me your video. I want it exact. Eliza nods, pockets the papers, and goes hunting the way you do when you've got scent and the creature thinks it's clean. The district communications office is not in this building. It lives in a low address on the edge of the strip mall with the frozen yogurt shop. But the comms woman, Marla Phelps, is here today. It turns out. In the conference room with Officer Dale and Dr. Gulliver. The principal. How'd I know? Air carries meetings faster than calendars. You can smell hairspray and hot plastic and a particular vanilla lotion that only people who want their hands to smell like cookies wear to work. Eliza waits until the secretary takes an important call and slips down the hallway like an apology. The conference room door is open 2 inches for comfort. Ventilation is fashionable again. Eliza holds her phone at her chest and listens. Because listening is the most aggressive thing you can do in a school without being escorted out. No, it's not about hiding, Marla is saying, the kind of voice that has practiced saying not hiding into microphones. It's about template consistency. Training assets need to be clean. You don't leave in coughs during a fire drill either. The parent group is asking for raw files. Gulliver says, thick in the throat. If this turns into a thing. It won't, Marla says. We'll make a new video. Student faces blurred. Softer soundtrack. Fewer technical terms. We say, reassuring routine, 3 times. Officer Dale gives the thumbs up at the end. No one wants anxiety. I want accuracy. Dale says. His voice is sanded to 60 grit when he uses it this low. We ran a good drill. We followed protocol. Exactly, Marla says brightly, as if she's wrung water from a towel. Everyone did great. The meeting exhales. Chairs creak in a key that wood only sings when it's pretending not to be tired. Eliza doesn't film them. She films the bulletin board just inside the doorway. A printed style guide pinned with a flower thumbtack. One line highlighted in yellow. Avoid distressing audio cues in training content, coughing, crying, alarms. Use neutral tone. She steps away because her hands are beginning to want to do something they will regret. She passes the maintenance cage in 3 strides and then returns in 1. Because Bixby's door is ajar and his monitor glows with the easy sin of unlogged access. Busy? She asks. Too sweet. He's not. He's reading a forum thread about routers arguing like toads in a pipe. I need email headers, she says, like someone ordering a part you both know is in the back. From MP helps at district.org on 10/16 and 10/18. Keyword anxiety. Also the share permissions for comms_archive. Bixby does the calculus again. Time now versus trouble later. He grumbles in a key that says he wishes he were a rock. Then pulls up Vault, the district's memory of email that pretends deletion is real. He's not supposed to. He sets it to headers only. Because that feels like wearing gloves. 10/16 9:12 p.m. Subject. Code 2B Drill Training, Audio Pass. From Marla Phelps. 2. Gulliver. Dale. Alvarez. Harrow. Please remove distressing elements, coughs. Panic noise. Legal suggests anxiety as umbrella term. 10/18 7:41 a.m. Subject. Great job. From Gulliver. 2. All staff. Smooth drill. No incidents. Thank you custodial for a clean building. Eliza reads. Asks for comms_archive permissions. Bixby opens the panel. Everyone in front office has read. Harrow has read. Marla has owner. Klein the maintenance man has nothing. He lives where folders do not. That's enough, Eliza says, which is a generous sentence to say to a man who expects to be blamed for the network's honesty. She takes her small mountain of exact and goes to the only sanctuary she trusts, the maintenance cage and the old CRT moon. She lines up Marla's session markers with the room 112 ceiling recorder. The training master. The hallway thermostat blinks. And the nurse ledger times. She lays them like transparencies on a light table. The kind they threw out years ago and that Harrow rescued because people still need to see through things. At 0:13 on the PA. The ceiling mic shows 2 coughs. The thermostat does a triple blink. The ledger writes headache. Nausea. Lips pale. The render notes say cut teacher cough, ward. The columns align like teeth in a zipper finally pulled closed. Eliza writes a word she has avoided because it tries to carry more weight than one line can bear. Suppression. She draws a second line. Lighter on the pencil. Beneath it, sanitization. She writes a third line in the smallest letters on the page. Merely tidy. I listen through the grate while she builds a split screen. Training audio on the left. The uncut ceiling mic on the right. Ward's cough in a box. The work order for L3 temp cover sliding in along the bottom. The body cam hole placed like a missing tooth with a caption, privacy hold. It's not flashy. It's not what the internet calls a gotcha. It's what a lung calls evidence. When people on screens clean away distress, they often say they're caring for audiences. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're caring for budgets. In the belly of this building I learned another rule. Clean is a direction. You can mop towards something or you can mop over it. The floor looks the same either way until your foot finds the patch that's still slick. After last bell, Eliza prints 2 stills. The session window with cough_1.wave and cough_2.wave muted. And the render notes with, cut teacher cough, ward? She slides both into a manila folder labeled for review in friendly handwriting. Then she writes one more letter small. On the inside flap where only a person opening their own conscience will see it. Why? She takes the folder to the conference room when it's empty and leaves it on the center of the table. Not like a bomb, more like a smoke detector with the battery back in. She does not leave her name. She leaves a post-it with a timecode instead, 013. That night, when the building runs its 317 test, The voice in the ceiling seems to hesitate between tone and sentence, a space only someone who listens to seams will hear. Eliza sits on the floor beside the maintenance cage and listens. 2. She has a printout of the BWF metadata software. Originator. Time of render. 10/18/612. She draws a line from render time to all staff email. Great job, 741. That's 19 minutes to take a story and make it good. Across the hall, the mascot head sits in the glass case with trophies. Its eyes are tired beads. If you set a speaker behind that glass and play breath _ then .wave. The plastic vibrates at 90 to 110 Hz, just enough to make a human think the room is smaller than it is. It's a parlor trick. This whole chapter could be a parlor trick if you like. The trick is the same one disinfectant plays on a hospital. The smell tells you nothing about survival. It just tells you someone wants you to believe. I have lived long enough in water that catches what people pour into it to know why Marla cut the cough. It's easier to teach steps if the room doesn't have to feel them. People remember instructions better when their throats aren't trying to open. She will say, "We were helping." She will be right in a way that makes the word right resent itself. She will be wrong in a way that leaves scratches at 40 inches on a door jamb. Eliza finishes her rough cut at 12:04. She names it doors _ lungs _ v1.mp4. She stares at the progress bar while it thinks. And the building gives a little pressure kiss through the door seals like a person about to sleep less than they should. When the file lands on her drive, she does what the brave pretend not to do. She makes 3 copies and hides them in different places with boring names. Spanish HW.mov. Choir concert B.mp4. Scan _ 0419.pdf. Then she sends herself a password she will remember because it is the dumbest one astronauts use and the smartest one teenagers share. Don't panic. On her way out, she stops by the nurse's office. Alvarez is not there. The ledger is locked now behind a glass cover. The oximeter sits on the counter like a late apology. Eliza stands in the doorway long enough for the automatic lights to second-guess her. Then turns away. In the staff lot, a car backs out and leaves a chalky smell of brakes that should be serviced. The sky is a color your cameras call 560OK and your poets call nothing good happens now. Eliza straps her bag across her chest and walks toward the one door no one checks at night. The side faculty entrance by the dumpsters. She leaves by it because she wants to use the door tomorrow when she walks in with a flash drive labeled training revisions. She will ask for 5 minutes on the agenda. She will not get 5. She will get 3 and a clock stare. She will use 2 for the cut cough. She will use 1 for the cardboard wedge. She will leave behind the numbers because numbers are cleaner than begging. If you're waiting for sirens, you're at the wrong story. The sound here is smaller and sticks. 013 in a timeline. L3 on a duct. 7 minutes in a body camera. 9 entries in a ledger. 1 inhaler at 0. 2 scratches shallow and 1 deep at 40 inches on a jam. That's enough to change how a room breathes if anyone in it decides to. The building, for its part, keeps practicing the sentence it knows how to say. This is a test of the internal audio system. Between is and a is a breath. No one cut it tonight. Maybe someone learned something. Or maybe the person with the razor went home early. In my water, memory eddies. You can't cut a cough out of a pipe. You can only wait until someone with a pencil writes "don't" next to remove distress and means it. The trick is getting the pencil into the right hand before the meeting begins. At night, the building tightens its belt. The district turns down the air to save money and the ducts talk in their sleep. The maintenance cage becomes a chapel of little LEDs. A strip on the capture card. A dot on the laptop. The old VCR's eye that refuses to admit it's retired. The room is not big. It's a square that learned to pretend to be smaller by stacking shelves. Eliza arrives with the sort of determination that makes keys quieter. She props the door with a rubber wedge that matches the one from room 112, same brand. Same tired angle. She doesn't sit right away. She paces once, twice, lays the pieces out like organs for transplant. The ceiling mic file from 112. The PA master clean. The thermostat blink markers. The nurse ledger timing. The generator pad heat ghost. The render notes where someone typed cut teacher cough, ward, as if it were lint. She names a new sequence doors underscore and underscore lungs underscore V2 because in the last 24 hours she has learned that stories graduate by shedding skins. The screen becomes a light table. The timeline a street. At 013 she stacks the two worlds, on the left. The training audio, friendly. Hygienic. Human hands washed, on the right. The ceiling's raw habit, 2 coughs. The chirp of an empty inhaler. The door levers clack. Ward's voice arranging air into cap, and getting, it's gone, back. She doesn't narrate, she uses captions instead. White on black. Typed the way you write numbers you expect to be read in court. Above the cough hills she writes teacher, Ward, and above the flat splice she writes training master. 013, cut. She drops the work order for L3 temp cover into the lower third and pins it there with a time stamp that meets the ledgers 1024 to 1036 like 2 palms. When she presses play, the building assists. The maintenance cage hum centers itself on 60 Hz. No wobble. The laptop fan adds a higher note, wishbone thin, each time she spools the raw file back. The old CRT, dragged here for its tube glow alone, waits like a moon that forgot about tides. I rise to the grate. Elbows, if a frog can be said to own elbows, propped on rust. And listen like a plumber to a prayer. Eliza has learned to breathe while working. It doesn't sound like a person at rest. It sounds like a runner at a jog they can hold till morning. She patches in the nurse ledger as a translucent overlay, no names. Just symptoms and times, the way Mercy would write them. She adds thermostat blinks as white pips under the timeline ruler, blink at 03. 12, 31, gap, blink blink blink, and lets them live where the room's pulse once went unnoticed. She places the body cam hole like a missing tooth and labels it, privacy hold, small enough to make the point louder. Then she does the unglamorous work of syncing to the building's chosen beat. She drags waveforms till they phase lock. Not to each other, human voices are sloppy, but to the vent fan's 90 to 110 Hz band that bothers the training audio enough to need a HPF at 120 Hz in the render nodes. When the hums line up, everything else submits. The zipper closes. Teeth meet. The picture makes the noise you hear when a jar lid that's been waiting finally turns. She leans back and rubs her eyes. There's a smear of pencil on her wrist where Remember to Breathe used to be. The tape label fell off hours ago. She checks the clip marked Ward underscore ceiling underscore October 22nd 11.wave and overlays the intercom one last time to be sure the cut is as plain as a crossed out word. It is. She rewinds. And because bodies like pattern, her lungs choose the shallower option for a stanza before they find themselves again. When she opens the render dialog, the laptop warms a degree. Heat is honest. It tells you a machine is trying. The progress bar begins its slow pilgrimage across the screen. 2%, 6%, 11%. She writes the password "Don't panic" on a sticky note and tucks it under the keyboard because brave people do practical things. The building is doing practical things. 2. Somewhere above the gym a timer with a stubborn soul counts down to 317. That's when the PA checks itself. When a voice lives in a ceiling alone and tries a sentence for the benefit of nobody. I know this because my water has learned to expect the small pressure change between tone and words. It's a habit between us. 21%. Eliza adds an export location to a cheap thumb drive, 1 copy, and a network share called training_revisions, another copy, and the laptop's own drive. Lest policy require a sacrifice. She is 3 times correct. She knows someone is going to ask for the file in the morning, in a tone that sounds helpful and is not. By 37%, the room air is the kind that tells you you've been here too long, warm plastic. Old dust. The thin vinyl smell of electrical tape. The wedge keeps the door. Barely. The closer pushes back. Air sneaks out in the seam like a bored cat. She thinks about getting up and propping it wider but bites the desire down because the copy to the network has reached 18% and the rule of progress bars is that if you break eye contact, they punish you. The building's 317 ping arrives the way a cough would if it had manners, only after the room has made space. A tone tickles the edges. You wouldn't hear it if you weren't married to the hum. Then the test phrase. This is a test of the internal audio system. Between is an A breath longer than it used to be. Eliza freezes, Not because the sentence is special but because her body remembers an older version. The short inhale that follows is anticipatory. Not toxic. If you've ever braced for a wave, you know the difference. She forces air down and out and back in. Her watch taps her wrist like a fussy ant. Breathe. 49%. The fan gets louder. The laptop inhales warm air and exhales warmer. The network share hits 42%, then hesitates. As if it has to ask permission from a hallway it doesn't trust. Eliza stands, finally, and nudges the wedge deeper with her shoe. The door obeys with a sigh. Cooler hallway air drizzles in, grazing her ankles like Mercy does on a hot day. She puts her hands on the table. Not because she's dizzy, not yet, but because everything is a bit narrower than it was. She looks at the inhaler photo on her printout, counter at 0, and the render notes with removed distress and the email where legal prefers anxiety. She doesn't talk. Talking uses air you may want later. 63%. The screen throws soft light across her face. She is paler than her ID photo. Not for lack of sun but for surplus of fluorescent. She checks the ceiling recorder bag again. Still there. Still labeled. Still a truth that won't fit in the bullet points. She opens her pocket recorder's files and drops the room 112 room tone at the tail of the timeline. Unmastered and honest. It will make the last second feel like a person who became a room and forgot to change back. Between 68% and 70% there is a flicker. Not power, that would be drama, but network permissions. The kind that lives in a rigid rack 2 doors down and believes in business hours. The training_revisions copy pauses at 59%. Then advances 1% like a child putting a toe in the pool. Eliza opens a terminal and nails the mount point to a command that sounds like pleading only to systems. Mount succeeded. Files are the easiest creatures to persuade. They want to be everywhere. She breaks her own rule and looks away from the bar. She leans into the hall to let the building paint her with corridor air. It smells like carpet glue, declarations, and a little winter from the night door. She returns to the chair and whispers the stupid line she taped to her wrist earlier and lost. Remember to breathe. 79%. 84%. Her heart learns the fan's rhythm because bodies are social. She rubs the center of her chest with 2 knuckles and smiles at herself for noticing. Not today. She tells the phantom of a cough that belongs to another throat in another room. She touches the rubber wedge with her shoe again to say thank you. The PA test circuit, helpful beast, powers down with a click that finds my water and makes it speak. I offer my usual sermon. Don't lock the door when there isn't any air. It arrives to no ears. Sermons prefer it that way. 92%. The laptop tries to fly without leaving the table. Fans make that lie sound almost brave. 95%. The cursor becomes an hourglass even though that metaphor died with sand on desks. 97%. There is a pause, a bureaucrat of a pause. The sort that wants signatures. The progress bar does not move and then, all at once, moves all the way. Export complete. The file lands with the grace of an object that was heavier while you weren't watching. Eliza exhales the way a diver breaks the surface, quiet. Grateful. No applause. She hits copy twice. 1 to the thumb drive. 1 to the network share. Where the percentage picks up from 59 and waddles toward 100. That's when the maintenance cage performs its party trick. The closer lies to the wedge. A shift in the hinge. Maybe. Or the wedge's rubber remembering it is tired. The door settles half an inch toward shut. The room tightens in the way people call psychological because they haven't met a pressure gauge. Eliza looks up. Small startle transmitted to her hands as a tremor. She reacts correctly. She turns. Steps. Scuffs the wedge back under. Resets the breath that wanted to climb her throat and live where decisions sit. The air that comes in is ordinary and therefore blessed. Her phone buzzes on the table. 3:19 a.m. No one good sends 3:19 a.m. on purpose. The subject line on the lock screen reads, "Share your code 2B, best practices, student voice opportunity, tomorrow." The sender is comms@district.org. The tone is cheerful. The optics crisp. Eliza laughs once without humor and throws the message into a folder she titles Context. She does not reply. She opens doors _lungs_v2mp4 and watches it like she isn't the one who made it. She watches Ward's Coughland where a flatline used to be. Watches the render notes name it. Watches the work order sit under the blinks. Watches, no incidents, from the all-staff email appear in small letters at the top right. As if to ask anyone in the room whether they would like to say that out loud again. It is not a perfect cut. The caption kerning needs love. The second cough's waveform is 1 pixel too high in the split screen. The ledger scan jitters half a frame. No one will care. She copies the file to a private cloud with a boring name. She sets the share link to anyone with link and gives it a password that is not "Don't panic" because she is not reckless. She picks Ward 112 and writes it nowhere. She closes the laptop to let it cool. Outside, in the parking lot, a truck turns over and does not catch. The starter sparks. The engine fails to agree with the morning. Air has to be present for combustion and for human plans. Nothing runs without it. Eliza slumps in the folding chair just enough to tell her spine to forgive her. She sets an alarm for 6:20 because that's when decisions like to get dressed and drink coffee and rehearse kindness. She texts herself agenda lines for the 3 minutes she will likely be given. 013 cut. L3 cover. 112 ledger. Anxiety versus symptoms. She puts the thumb drive in a zip pocket and tests the zipper 3 times like a ritual. When she falls asleep, it's a fall more than a drift. Her head tilts toward the door so every draft has to present itself to her face. The laptop breathes. The building breathes, too, with a little more coherence than last night. Not because it learned, exactly, but because one of its rooms got opened before the morning's first bell and some air had the decency to move. From below, I keep count the way water keeps count. 1 drip from the mop sink upstairs. 2 from the custodian's rinse. Then quiet. My pee trap is content for the moment. If a frog had a prayer, it would be short and it would envy air. Before the alarm can pretend to be kind, a different vibration arrives. The not urgent footsteps of a human who comes early because paperwork is calmer before people. Klein. I know his gait. Chup, chop. He notices the wedge, notices the light under the cage door, and does what Klein does when he finds something out of place. He fixes it. He nudges the wedge back into a neat right angle. The door sits as the manufacturer intended. It does not seal. He does not lock it. It is an almost kindness. He keeps walking, away from the one room where a sleeping girl and a bent frog have both been practicing the same sentence in different languages. Don't lock the door when there isn't any air. The intercom will practice its sentence again at 7:45 when the first bell threatens. It will sound as cheerful as a parent at a doorway. The building will mean it. The adults in the front office will mean it, too, each to their own paycheck's edge. Eliza will stand in a conference room with a thumb drive and 3 minutes. She will be exact. And somewhere, inside a server labeled with a name that thinks of itself as useful, training_revisions, a copy of doors_and_lungs_V2 will finish syncing. Files don't sleep. They wait. In that waiting, there is air. In that air, there are 2 coughs at 013 no one got to cut. Morning puts on good shoes when there's a meeting. The conference room is all coffee breath and citrus wipes. Chairs spaced as if distance is a virtue. The projector warms up with a throat clear that only a frog would call familiar. Eliza stands with her messenger bag at her hip like a second rib. She has 3 minutes on the agenda. People who run meetings love numbers you can time with a second hand. The cast sits where air knows them. Dr. Gulliver at the head. Cologne that calls itself Forest. Marla Phelps with a laptop open to a document titled Talking Points, Officer Dale. Flat as a tool roll, Nurse Alvarez. Hands folded like gauze. Mr. Harrow leaning into guilty posture. Klein hovering in the doorway. Chup. Chop heel respecting the carpet. Eliza plugs in a thumb drive and labels her voice exact so it can walk into the room without getting searched. Timecode 013, she says. She doesn't say good morning. Courtesy wastes air. The screen splits. Training master on the left. Room 112 ceiling mic on the right. A caption at the bottom reads L3 temp cover. Work order, T48H. The ledger floats in the corner, names blocked. Symptoms plain. Times bright as traffic lights. The thermostat blinks tick like a metronome the room pretends not to hear. At 013, the left side stays clean. The right side coughs twice, student. Then teacher. An inhaler chirps empty. Ward's voice does, cap, cap, and receives, it's gone. The door lever clacks. 3 scratches at 40 inches become a still. The work order sits under it all like a piece of cardboard under a vent. Eliza lets the room listen to its own building. She does not narrate. She writes "cut teacher cough, ward" in a caption because the render notes wrote it first. 3 minutes is a lungful if you hold it. At 2:41, she adds body cam. 0 right pointing arrow 713, privacy hold, and slides the great job, no incidents all staff email across the top like a weather band. At 2:58, she stops. Time, like air, is a rule here. Thank you, Gulliver says. Tone daycare soft. We appreciate your passion. We'll review this through the proper channels. Marla folds her smile like a brochure. This is important context. Eliza. And we want student voice. We also want to avoid distress in training assets. I'm sure you understand. Eliza doesn't nod. Distress happened already. She says. The training asset just sounded clean. Dale clears his throat to the correct decibel. We followed protocol. The drill ran smooth. Protocols are excellent, Alvarez says, surprising herself with the volume. We should add oximetry. We should add CO detection. We should use the word exposure when it's exposure. Silence travels like a slow elevator. Klein stares at the still of L3 and rubs the spot on his palm that knows sheet metal. The word temporary breathes tin. We will convene a committee, Gulliver says, which is what schools call oxygen when the window doesn't open. In the meantime, we'll adjust messaging. Marla? We'll produce a new video. Marla says, gentler tone, fewer technicalities. We need to reassure. Can I have my drive back? Eliza asks, equal parts polite and flammable. Dale looks at Gulliver. Gulliver looks at Legal in his head. Legal is not in the room. It's her property. Dale says, a boredom that reads as backbone. The drive returns to Eliza's hand with less heat than it left. They dismiss her without saying dismissed. That's another skill meetings learn. How to open a door without moving. In IT, Bixby receives a ticket. Remove user, Eliza from training_revisions. The computer uses the word permissions like a mop. He clicks deny because policy hums louder before lunch. A second ticket arrives. Purge doors _ and _ lungs _ V2 from share. He does the ugly honest thing, he complies. The file disappears like breath into winter. The network calls this hygiene. Files are not lungs. They clone. One copy lives on the thumb drive in Eliza's pocket. One copy lives under a boring name in a cloud that asks for Ward 112 and doesn't care why you know it. One copy, labeled Spanish HW.mov, waits behind a homework folder like a polite lie. By afternoon, a parent group link passes in texts with measured punctuation. Please view, be careful sharing, password, Ward 112. No hashtags, no exclamation marks. Parents learn discretion by practicing fear. The district posts a statement. We are committed to safety. Our drill on 10/17 ran smoothly. We regularly review and update our training materials to reduce anxiety while reinforcing best practices. We appreciate our community's partnership. Anxiety and partnership travel well together in sentences. Air avoids both. The new training video drops 2 days later with strings and a calm voiceover that sounds like someone's aunt. It says hold in a way that doesn't touch the throat. At 0:13, nothing is cut because nothing is there, except one little inhale between is and a in. This is a code to be hold. They left it on purpose. Authenticity is the new disinfectant. The breath is not Ward's. It belongs to whoever won the style guide battle that week. Air bears witness anyway. Changes arrive in a trickle no committee will claim as defeat. CO detectors on the South Wing trip alight every Monday at 9. There's a log now and a second signature. Not Klein's. Oximeters in the nurse's office. 3 of them. Batteries full. Alvarez writes SPO in the margin like a prayer she can bill. Work orders require photos, before and after, and the phrase temporary cover earns a red stamp that says not a plan. The style guide for comms loses a line. Remove distressing elements. It keeps neutral tone because tone is what people hear when they don't listen. There are consequences, measured in office chairs. Eliza gets a conduct meeting for unauthorized access. She brings headers and a policy paragraph and a confidence that is not teenage but mammalian. You don't apologize for breathing. She receives detention with Harrow, who calls it a lab block and hands her a cardioid mic. Ward sends a voicemail from a number that doesn't work twice. I saw it, she says, voice rinsed thin. I count my breaths in the bathroom fan now. Thank you for being exact. The message ends with the duct's sigh. Dale shows up at the maintenance cage one night and stands where Eliza stood for Chapter 5. He doesn't say he's sorry. He asks, "Does your file have a chain of custody?" She says, "It has air." He nods as if those two sometimes agree. Marla updates the style guide and edits a new FAQ. Q. Why don't we show coughs? A. Because training should reassure. She keeps her job. She keeps the word clean. She now says, evidence-based reassurance. I don't know what it means to a human throat. Klein prints a sign in 24-point Arial and tapes it on the boiler room door above the clipboard. Do not block return vents. Even temporarily. He doesn't sign it. He oils the hinge on room 112 and replaces the door wedge with one that has a warning label the size of a dollar bill. He keeps his chop. He checks the cardboard wedge in Eliza's bag with his eyes and then checks the floor behind his own memory to see if anything else is hiding there. Alvarez begins adding one extra line to every drill day ledger. Words used. If she writes anxiety, she also writes SPO 94%. She does not stop using lips pale. The ledger learns to be a lung. The school holds a parent forum in the cafeteria. Microphones on stands. District tablecloths. The mascot head behind plexiglass. Eyes reflecting fluorescent moons. A parent asks, "Careful. About October 17th. About 013. About 7 minutes. Gulliver says, "We're improving practices." Marla says, "We're updating training." Dale says, "We followed protocol." Alvarez says, "We will carry oximeters." Klein says nothing into microphones. He speaks to vents. A records request arrives the week after. All audio and video assets related to Code 2B. Work orders for HVAC South Wing. Body cam footage. The district replies with files and holds and redactions. A lawyer uses the word mitigate like a verb for mopping. The ceiling mic file is not theirs to produce. It stays where Eliza put it. Boring name in a cloud with a password that isn't embarrassed by what it knows. The kids learn something none of the adults put in a plan. They notice thermostat LEDs. They notice paper streamers above grills during science lab, just to see. They notice that doors can be honest or polite but not both. They learn to ask, air? The way people ask, keys? When they leave the house. You teach a generation to lock doors and then you teach them to check the air. Both fit in a backpack. The building returns to its rituals because buildings are priests of what they repeat. 317 comes nightly. The tone pings. The sentence walks out of the ceiling. Between is an A. The new inhale waits, longer than the style guide writer intended. I think, maybe the person at the console is getting worse at cutting. Maybe they're getting better at leaving. From my grate, I watch room 112 remember differently. The streamers Eliza used are long gone. But if you hold your palm to the return, you feel a draw. The supply pushes. Air participates. The scratch at 40 inches is still there under a fresh smear of paint that thinks it can teach wood not to know. The inhaler left under the desk migrated to a baggie in the nurse's drawer of kept things. The door wedge bears its warning label like a joke the wedge does not understand. People stop by the maintenance cage in twos to ask Harrow if they can borrow the CRT for a vibe in a project. He says it's out of service. He needs its moon more than they need their vibe. He and Eliza sit sometimes with the screen dark and the doors underscore and underscore lungs timeline open. Not to edit but to stare at its lines the way you stare at a river you've crossed and can't uncross. A superintendent memo comes down a month later with bulleted improvements and boldface. The only line that matters to throats is the one about ventilation, during Code 2B. If it is safe to do so. Staff will verify returned air is active or open additional air paths per updated HVAC guidance. The line argues with itself and wins halfway. Half a win is still oxygen. I hear you asking if someone was fired. If someone sued. If the story ends with a bang to reward your attention. No, the horror here was never volume. It was removal. Somebody cut 013 to save feelings. Then wrote great job at 741. Somebody wrote anxiety over lips pale 9 times in 12 minutes. Somebody folded cardboard into a throat and called it temporary. The opposite of horror isn't punishment. It's air. Eliza takes 2 detentions and the media arts room as a second home. She becomes the person who labels cables. Who writes names on batteries? Who asks where does this breathe? Before she hits record, she films theater kids running lines under a vent that hums right on 60. And she tells them it means the building is not hiding tonight. Ward sends one last message. A photo of a bathroom ceiling fan. Dust combed off and the grill bright. Captioned, be exact. She does not send her new school's name. She does not have to. Marla releases a new FAQ that uses the word transparency 4 times and trauma twice. She makes a version of Eliza's split screen with actors and stock sound where the cough is staged and palatable. People will watch it and be reassured. That is a kind of kindness. It is not the kind lungs crave. Lungs crave the version where the cough is real and the door is open. Dale returns 7 minutes of body cam to a file that says no relevant audio. He hears himself breathing, he doesn't like that. He signs a training log that adds, open air path when feasible, and finds that his hand writes feasible like a dare. Klein retires the chop shoe before winter. The new heel is true. He puts a red tamper tag on L3 returns district-wide, a strip that breaks if you tape. He tightens screws on the trim plates in rooms that don't know their own names. Alvarez keeps the ledger and keeps writing. She adds one more column no one asked for. Words we didn't use. On days that smell like bleach and policy. The column fills faster than the others. She would like to stop being brave about vocabulary. She keeps doing it. As for me, nothing has changed and everything has. I still live where mop water comes to confess. I still know the building's moods by pressure and hum. But now, when the 317 voice tests itself and the breath between is and a sits there like a coin, I think of how much equipment it takes to pretend air is not the main character in a school. Doors are actors. Vents are understudies. Air is the plot. If you need a moral, humans like to leave rooms with handouts. I'll print mine on a card you can keep near your lanyard. Don't lock the door when there isn't any air. If you must lock it, check the return. If the return is dead, call it. If they tell you to say anxiety, say SPO. If they cut 013, count out loud. If anyone asks what you're doing, be exact. The mascot's eyes still catch the fluorescent and turn it into 2 dumb moons. I don't mind the mascot. It's honest about being a head without a lung. The rest of us don't have that excuse. This is where I ask you a rude question from a drain. How many breaths per minute are you taking right now? If you don't know, that's fine. Count to 12 and see if the number fits. If it doesn't, open whatever counts as a window in your life and try again. The building will test itself at 317 whether you listen or not. It will say, this is a test of the internal audio system. And between is and a you might hear the breath we left in on purpose. Proof that clean isn't the same as true. If you hear it, you'll know you're still part of the story. If you don't, that's all right. Someone in a room with a ledger will write lips pale and keep asking for words that let air in. I am a frog. My prayers are short. They go like this. Breathe. Be exact. And if you ever find yourself holding a door shut in a room that forgot how to exchange with the world, put your hand to the metal and listen. Doors have pulses. When they don't, make one. Thus ends today's tale from Vesper the Frog. If a question lingers or a thought sparks, leave me a note below. I read them all. If the story charmed you, share it with a friend. And tap subscribe so you'll be first to hear when the next adventure leaps from the lily pads. Until then, this is Vesper, signing off. Ribbit.